Chapter 2. The Individualistic Understanding of Economics. A question which arises when evaluating economic systems is, which one is more successful? To answer that question, the idea of success must be defined apart from the efficiency of the system, which is merely an attribute which defines no end goal of the society. Is success quantity and/or quality of material goods? Constant growth of the system? Stability of the system? Military power? Wisdom and/or happiness of the people? Complexity or simplicity, etc. Just what is the end goal? Economy is from the Greek word oikos, house, and nomos, to manage, thus house management. Some accepted definitions of economy are 1. The careful or thrifty use or management of resources, as of income, materials, or labor, American Heritage. 2. The system of production, distribution, and consumption, the Cognitive Science Laboratory at Princeton. 3. The state of a country or region in terms of the production and consumption of goods and services, from Wikipedia. Economics is the study of this state and system, defined as 1. The practical science of production and distribution of wealth, wealth being defined as the stock of useful things, John Stuart Mill. 2. The science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses, Lionel Robbins. The individualist believes that the most noble end a human can seek is the perfection of mind, body, and spirit. All other ends are deviation from this path and wastes of time and energy to varying degrees. This is the individualistic concept of economic success, which consequently alters many economic mechanisms of the present world, rendering most of them useless, if not pointless, as they do not contribute to this successful end. Economy began simply as self-subsistence, such as simply producing food, water, and shelter, and distributing it to only oneself. Soon this grew to distribution amongst the people of the group, then evolved to macro-subsistence, large-scale tasks performed by the few for the many with knowledge that they withheld from their brethren, by accident or purposely, such as large-scale farming. With the handing over of personal responsibilities to others, an unnecessary complexity of economics is produced and a cycle of malignant growth is initiated. Soon services need rendered for the myriad of tasks neglected because of the one unnaturally doing things for the many has substantially less time to do those things he should be doing for himself. The exact same happens to all who become involved, such as those rendering services now need services for tasks they too have neglected. Thus this cycle of nonsense grows, only thickening ignorance among the people and further specializing their abilities and awareness, removing true independence by increasing dependency upon others. As soon as value begins being placed on these tasks and services, a whole new dimension of perversion is born. The initial overcomplexity may still have been performed in a compassionate manner, yet with value comes corruption, as time is initially of equal value to all. Hence the grantor of services, or macro supplier, raises prices so they have more free time. This forces the people dependent on that good or service to have less time, because they now have to work more. Therefore, in the simplest state, all beings have exactly the same spare time. When this complexity is erected, time becomes a fluid commodity, which flows from the many to the few. Thus, whether they know it or not, those supplying a good or service upon which others have allowed themselves to depend upon, control those people. Soon this force is realized by some, and iniquity enters man, and he begins to prey upon his fellow brother's trust and ignorance, and the true need supplier is born. Prices are raised, lies are told for their reasoning, deception in endless facets arise, such as goods and services that are not needed, but the people are convinced in every way to utilize them, thus distorting their concept of essentials and simplicity, allowing further complexity, which is by its nature a proportionate veil for deception. This cycle continues growth in complexity, specialization, alienation, ignorance, dependence, and deception, creating distrust amongst the brotherhood of man and dividing them against each other in endless ways while taking time from the many and giving it to the few, magnifying all negative emotions, as time is essential for happiness. Thus, those with less time begin to experience negative feelings. Before long, these bottom-end users miserable and timeless, begin to desperately seek time by the same methods, albeit more hasteful, through severe lack of time, thus resulting in inferior solutions, such as a prostitute or a drug dealer, both operating on capitalistic principles with the value of their gain exceeding that of their expenditures. Thus, the most effective method becomes adopted, the easiest being simply theft, little work, time and energy, for exactly what is needed, the same practice that occurs constantly in modern business. Soon, even law is used to gain time or money, and thus the circle of corruption is complete. This is the formula of the need suppliers, the intermediate between private wealth and public interest, either real or synthetically generated. This is where the terrible relationship between the banks and businesses come into play. The majority of bottom-end users are unable to do business with the merchants due to lack of time and money the system inflicts upon the masses. Thus, the merchants, hungry for more time and eager to exploit this massive resource of people, develop the banks so that they can assist the people in doing business. The bank is really the only one doing business with the merchant and enslaving the people for their help. To illustrate the point, the merchant seduces a soul into a material object. This soul now needs money to quench this desire. The merchant's partner, or second face, the bank, lends a hand. The loan goes from the bank right past the individual to the merchant. Thus, the bank directly pays the merchant to bait the people to enslave themselves to the bank, who then also makes money off of these already poor souls by usury, increasing their desperation. The bank thus becomes the controller of the workforce, crippling them even further by usury, taking the last of their time and money. Most likely the bank is a collection of wealth by a merchant or group of merchants to initiate this system of control. Over time, the bank becomes strictly oriented to these self-initiated monetary feedback loops, growing exponentially in power and control, making bond slaves of the entire populace. The handing over of one's own responsibilities to others in even the smallest degree initiates this process of individual alienation, leading to a lack of understanding of the mechanics of the entire unnecessary system as well as the methods of self-subsistence, subsequently breeding false convictions of how all things work together and the true purpose of life, leaving these individuals prey for wiser forces to take advantage of this ignorance, ending in an inescapable dependency. To avoid this information asymmetry and its repercussions delineated above, the individualists believe in all power to the individual, bar none. The single most important key to this is free, unrestricted knowledge. Thus, the individualists erect the library of accredited free knowledge and instruction, which teaches all the people freely. Additionally, vast improvements are made to the public education system of the miners. All necessities of self-sustenance are taught, as well as free access granted to all knowledge possessed by all mankind, collected and clearly catalogued by Lafki, L-A-F-K-I. With the masses enlightened, the cycle of dependency begins to reverse. The individualistic society's priority is not monetary or material gain, it is intellectual gain, resulting in efficiency of every industry, orchestrating them toward one goal, the evolution of mankind. Therefore, because its priorities are completely different from the pointless priorities of past systems, many laws of the dying world's economics do not apply. They are seen as incomplete and inferior distortions of truth, gross misconceptions which only serve to limit man. Such are the concepts of employment, economic growth, supply and demand, privatization, and specialization, all flawed concepts which limit man because they are a resultant of a system which has forfeited individual responsibility. The initial creation of a macro supplier creates first privatization, then employment, then specialization, then a supply and a demand, then a monitoring of the cycle and forces implemented to achieve economic growth, which is merely increased profit for the need suppliers at the expense of the masses.